Okay, good afternoon, Trojans, and welcome to the screencast. We hope that this is an informative video that you can watch and click through as many times as you need to so you can get a better sense of what our plans for as we start to think about what returning to school is going to look like in the fall. So the target for today is just to provide an update as of July 9th as to what our plans are and just try to elaborate a little bit more perhaps than what I was able to in the short video series. So with that, let's jump right in and provide an introduction and a brief overview of our return to learn planning. I think the biggest thing I want families and our students to know is that our staff has been working really hard to plan through the three different models that have been embraced by the Iowa Department of Education. And so for the purposes of Pleasantville's planning, I'm calling option 1 our on-campus learning model. I'm calling option 2 our distance learning model, and I'm calling our option 3 the hybrid learning model. And in subsequent slides here, I'll go into more details as to the specifics of those three models. There are some common things among all three of the models. First and foremost, state and federal guidelines will dictate the rules and regulations for any plan that Pleasantville Schools identifies and prioritizes. The Iowa Department of Public Health, as well as the Marion County Department of Public Health, will help inform our health responses, as well as give us guidance on cleaning and sanitizing protocols and routines so that we make sure our practices and procedures here at the school are safe and aligned with best practices from the medical field and the health field. And it should go without saying, but all activities and athletics will be determined based on guidance and expectations outlined by the Iowa High School Athletic Association, the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union, the Iowa High School Music Association, as well as the Iowa High School Speech Association. Okay, so let's dive into the first plan here. Option 1 is what we're calling the on-campus learning model. I'll make no secret, as of today, July 9th, this would be our preferred model, is to bring students back on campus with attendance required as normal. And so this, to me, is the most typical model of schools. We've all known it. There would be accommodations made for students who felt they were medically unable to attend in person, including the use of online and hybrid models. But the majority of our students in this model, the on-campus model, would be here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, all day, every day, on-site learning with our staff. The hot topic right now is face coverings and masks. And as I alluded to in the earlier video series, we intend to provide these and make them available for staff and students, but not make them required. And so there may be some instances, I can think of busing, for instance, where if we're not able to safely spread out on the bus, then we may have to consider having face coverings required as part of that situation. But otherwise, we anticipate in every safe instance that face coverings will be optional for students and staff. As I said earlier, face coverings will be made available, and so we've ordered a hefty dose of PPE and masks. Buses services will be prioritized for our state required routes, and unfortunately what that means is that we're likely to not run our in-town routes this year until further notice, just because of space concerns and making sure that we're safe on the bus. Of course, food service and lunch and breakfast will be provided, but the cafeteria times and locations might be different. There's a chance that our students K-12 will have the same experience that some may recall from preschool, where they eat in the classroom. And so that'll be kind of different and maybe even a little fun, but just know that we may have to modify how many students can be in the cafeteria at times and in certain locations, depending on the rules and regs at that point in time. So that's in a nutshell option 1, on-campus learning model, which as of July 9th is the preferred model for Pleasantville schools. Options 2 and 3, I'll start with option 2. This is the distance learning model. In this model, all buildings would be closed to students and community. Staff would still have option to be on campus using their instructional tools and programs and technology. Students would still be required to access instruction online, as well as lessons and materials. Teachers would be required to take attendance and submit that to the school and to the state. And so the difference between last spring and this fall, if we have to go with option 2, distance learning, is that there would be new curriculum topics covered and attendance would be required. And so those are the two big differences there. The school would, of course, deploy our one-to-one electronic devices to all students. And I'm pleased to share that we're securing enough Wi-Fi hotspots through Verizon so that families in need without service can check those out. If option 2 is required, Pleasantville's food service department will provide grab-and-go combo meals for lunch and breakfast for those who want it, for any students in grades preschool through 12th grade, and that's for Pleasantville students only. Option 3 is the hybrid model. To me, this is perhaps the most confusing of the 3 models, and to be very honest, this would be the least popular option in my opinion, and probably would be avoided unless it becomes absolutely necessary. In this model, students would be divided up and use a rotating schedule that would provide some on-campus instruction as well as some online instruction. Just like the other models, attendance would be required and submitted. And what we envision right now is what we're calling an A-B format, and the groups of students would be divided up into 2 groups. And so hypothetically, students divided up into A group would be on campus learning from our staff on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then have distance learning on Thursdays and Fridays. Students in B group would do distance learning on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then meet with teachers here on campus Thursdays and Fridays. Transportation would be provided for the groups that were coming to campus, and there would be no school on Wednesday for the purposes of cleaning, as well as giving our staff the opportunity to plan for instruction both on campus and through distance learning. We would provide additional details on the schedule if this model became necessary, and of course would deploy our one-to-one devices for all students with hotspots as needed. Be the same process as the on-campus and distance learning in terms of face coverings, transportation, and food service would also be provided in this model, just as it would in the online exclusively model option 2. I think it's important for parents just to know that there's just 2 different types of distance learning. And so last spring in the optional learning program, most of the learning was done using what I would call an asynchronous distance learning approach. And so just know that we've been able to do some things and do some preparation over the summer. And what we've asked from our staff is to be prepared to provide both synchronous and asynchronous distance learning. And again, the options 2 and 3 right now, I guess our approach and our stance is that we'll only go to those options if we're told from the governor or from the federal government that we are required to. Otherwise, our priority is to be safely here on campus Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. So don't hear this update and assume that we're going to go to this model. I guess the reason I'm sharing it is just to provide parents and families perhaps some sense of encouragement that we're preparing for all the different models and prepared to come out stronger than perhaps what we were able to adjust on the fly last spring. So our plans, if we have to go to online instruction or even the hybrid model, would be to utilize both synchronous and asynchronous distance learning philosophy. I know safety is obviously the most paramount concern at this point in time, and so I think it's important just to share a little bit of an update about what we're doing there. So our plan is to have a lot of hand sanitizer dispensers. You'll see them outside classroom doors as well as common areas. We've already invested in the hydrostatic disinfectant mist sprayers. We've ordered and we're continuing to order optional protective equipment, so masks will be provided for those who want them and will be optional. So we're going to increase staff trainings and preventative measures and be strategic about even little things like how we go up and down the hallways, how many students are released out into the common spaces at one time. From a maintenance and custodial perspective, our high-touch surfaces will be cleaned more frequently using the recommended guidelines per the Center for Disease Control. We'll start out emphasizing at-home screening, so families and parents, we're encouraging you to take your kid's temperature and help us screen them. At the school here, if anybody's running a temp of 100.4 or higher, one change is that in the past they would have been asked to stay home for 24 hours. In accordance with the CDC's guidelines, that will increase to 72 hours now if there's a temp. So if we're feeling like that's not enough, we're prepared to ramp up screening and do more at school of staff and students if necessary. To support that, we've already invested in touchless thermometers for screening, and we participate in ongoing updates and meetings and trainings with the Iowa Department of Public Health, the Iowa Department of Education, as well as local health authorities and experts. Okay, so circling kind of back here, just know that keeping everybody safe is going to be our priority. That will drive the decision making. As of right now, unless we are told otherwise by state or federal government, our priority is to reopen school on campus here in the fall and ramp up our safety and security protocols for staff and students. Of course, this is all subject to change, and so right now, Pleasantville's school calendar is set to open with students on August 27th. That won't change, most likely, but the format of how we deliver instruction is subject to change based on any directives from the governor, from the federal government, as well as if the global health crisis takes a turn significantly for the worse. So just know that we keep a close eye on these things, and we'll be prepared to adjust and communicate our plans accordingly. And so in closing here, just know that we've been hard at work this summer planning for all three of these scenarios: on-campus learning, distance learning, and hybrid learning. This is a little bit of a moving target, and we'll continue to flush out the plans of our different scenarios between now and early August. And just know that we're blessed and have advantages here in Pleasantville that not all schools can offer, particularly around technology and class sizes. We just feel fortunate that we have some advantages that probably the larger suburban and urban schools can't offer at this point in time. So, and parents, I know one of the concerns, if you have a child who's got a medical concern or a pre-existing condition, just know that we'll work with you to make sure that your child is able to participate, whether it's distance learning, hybrid learning, or something that we haven't even thought of yet. So we'll work with you. If you're medically worried about your child coming back to school, we'll work with you to figure that out. Okay, so online registration information is going to be emailed out to families tomorrow on July 10th. Please work with us here to get signed up in a timely manner so we can make plans accordingly. And just contact Amy in the superintendent's office with any registration questions. And contact information is provided there. One thing that's not in the slide deck here that I want to share is just that at the end of July, there will be a survey coming out to families around our plans for a chance for you to give feedback on them, as well as provide any thoughts or opinions or perspectives. So look for that in later this month. And in closing, just know that as it sits right now, we can't wait to see you here on August 27th at school. We want you to stay safe, stay smart, and as always, go Trojans.